In this video, I'm gonna show y'all the fundamentals of sound design, and by the end of watching this video, you're gonna be able to make your own presets from scratch. So if you don't know who I am, I go by Infinite, and lately I have been on a crazy sound design kick. And chances are, if you heard of me, you have heard of my banks. West Coast Magic, Dedication, Interstellar. Oh, you can't forget that Lost Files kit. You feel me? The best $5 deal you can get out here. You feel me? And in my journey of doing sound design, nobody taught me how to do anything. I really had to learn on my own, and I don't want it to be like that for y'all. So I'm really gonna give y'all some gems in this video, so make sure to stick it out to the end. And just to give a quick overview of the video, we're gonna be talking about ADSR, cutoff, the 4 waveforms, effects that are commonly used for making presets, modulation, and after telling y'all all of those, we're gonna cook up some sounds. And I'm gonna show y'all how to cook up keys and plucks, pads, synth leads, and synth basses. And I'm really finna give y'all the sauce of my own process of how I make presets. So make sure to stick to the end. All right, so the first thing we're gonna talk about is ADSR. What is ADSR? ADSR is basically these 4 knobs right here: attack, decay, sustain, and release. So let's get on to the first one, attack. So the attack knob will determine how fast you fade into the sound. So here's a sound with no attack at all. And here's a sound with an exaggerated attack. But if we're being honest, most attacks that you're going to be using for your sounds are going to be kind of short like this. Not exactly a 0 like this, because sometimes that can carry a click. Kind of see how there's a very high pitched click in the beginning. So sometimes just to get rid of that, you're gonna just use it at like something like that, just something like a very, very small attack. But just to keep it short, the lower the attack, the quicker you'll go into the sound, and the longer attack, the longer it'll take to get into the sound. Now let's talk about the sustain knob. So the sustain knob will determine how loud the sound will be when you're holding down the keys or when you're playing it. So here's a sound with no sustain. Here's one with full sustain. And here's one with about 50% sustain. So the lower the sustain, the quieter it'll be. The higher the sustain, the louder it'll stay. So the decay knob basically determines how long it'll take to get from the attack point right here to the sustain point. So if we increase the decay, you see the attack and the sustain point are like way farther apart. It's gonna take way longer to get there. But if you make it shorter, you'll get there quicker. So for this example, I'm gonna turn down the sustain knob just so you can see how the decay knob will really work and affect the sound. First, we're gonna do short decay. See how you can't even hear it? If we just turn it up a little bit, you should probably be able to hear it. And then if we turn it up, you can see how long it can take to get from the attack to the sustain. See how it kind of makes it like fade down like that? That's what you can do with decay. So before we get to the release knob, I want to talk about these 2 knobs right here because some VSTs do have them. Basically, they change the curve of the lines of the decay or the attack, so you can make it get to that point quicker or shorter. It just kind of helps you fine tune everything. Now the release knob is going to determine how long it takes for everything to kind of fade out after you're done pressing the keys. So if we put a 0% release right here and I play it just like really quick, see how it immediately stops? But if we turn this up, we can play it, let go, and it fades out just like that. Now it's time to talk about the cutoff knob. So the cutoff knob is basically an EQ. Now most synths have different type of presets for the cutoffs. Like you see all these right here, you see all these right here. You feel me? You can get really creative with them. Like stuff like this, you can get really, really creative with them. But most commonly, you're gonna end up using a 12 cut or a 24 cut. And basically all this is doing is just making a low pass EQ. It's the same as just going over here, opening up an EQ and doing this. So the more you turn up the cutoff knob, the more you're cutting out of the high ends. So watch, we're gonna take the cut knob all the way down and we're gonna slowly bring it up so y'all can really hear what's going on. Now when it comes to these cutoff presets, if you see something that's called LP, it means low pass. If you see something that's called HP, it means high pass. So low pass lets the lows pass. In a high pass, you're letting all the highs pass. Y'all probably have done this a bunch of times because we use a lot of high pass cutoffs for when we're cutting out the low end to make room for 808. So it's like stuff that you kind of already been using and know. Hey, hold up real quick. I just want to let y'all know that I did drop the Lost Files bundle. And I'm telling you right now, this is the best $5 investment that you can make for your production career. 40 analog lab preset, 20 accents, and 20 midis. All royalty free. And if you don't got analog lab, I actually took all of the presets and converted them into one shot so everybody can use them. First link in the description. Now it's time to talk about the 4 waveforms. Now personally, I don't think me telling you the history and the creation of these waveforms is going to be beneficial for you learning sound design. So instead, I'm going to show you what they look like and show you how they sound. These 4 waveforms are the foundation of making sound. So it is really important to know which ones sound like what. All right, so boom, this is a sine wave right here, and it's really smooth. This is a sawtooth right here. It's really harsh and kind of buzzy. Now this is a triangle, and it's kind of like the middle point of the sine and the sawtooth. And this is a square wave, and it's the most bold one of them all. Now the dope thing is that you're not defined to these 4 waveforms. You can use knobs like these right here to change the shape of them, and when you change the shape, you're changing the sound as well. Now when it comes to effects, there are a bunch of them. So it is gonna take too long to go over every single one, but just know you can get really creative with them, you know what I mean? But since we don't have that much time to go over every single effect, we're gonna go over my 3 most common used effects when I'm sound design, which is gonna be reverb, delay, and chorus. So reverb is kind of hard to explain, and in my personal opinion, it's easier to understand reverb when you're understanding how it affects a sound rather than just knowing a definition of it. So I'll play a sound and I'll slowly increase the knob to 100% so you can see how the reverb is changing the sound. Now, as you can see with the knob, it really got intense around like this 40 to 50% range. So whenever I'm using reverb personally, I'm usually around like 20-ish to like 30-ish%. But with that being said, you feel me? Everybody got their own taste, so put it at whatever percent you think sounds cool to you. You know what I mean? That's how you get that uniqueness, that individuality. Now let's go over some of the knobs that are in the reverb so y'all know how to customize it to your sound. So the pre-delay is basically how fast you want the reverb to affect the sound. If you want it to start immediately, keep it at 0. If you wanted to have some delay, pre-delay, you feel me? Then put it at a higher number. So for instance, this right here is a short pre-delay. See how the reverb just starts immediately? And here is a long pre-delay. So you see how the reverb actually took a second to kick in? That's because of the pre-delay. Okay, let's go. Now we got the HP and the LP knobs. Basically high pass frequency and low pass frequency, but for the effect, not the actual sound, you feel me? So you can take this high pass knob, you know what I mean, cut out all that low end, and it's not gonna affect the actual sound, it's gonna affect the reverb. So here's like very low high pass, then a very high pass. You see how there's no low end in the reverb sound? That's what these knobs are doing. I really like these knobs right here because sometimes they can really help clean up your mix. Size is pretty self-explanatory. Bigger size, bigger reverb. You feel me? So the decay knob determines how long the reverb is going to fade out. You feel me? So high decay means you're gonna be able to hear the reverb for a longer time, and low decay means it's gonna go away quicker. Boom, low decay. And we'll actually use a bigger reverb just so it's more easier to hear. You feel me? See how it goes away so quickly instead of turning it up. See how long that's ringing out? Because of that decay knob, you feel me? So the damping knob is really similar to the decay knob, and they're kind of like work together, you know what I mean? But the damping is more focused on the high end frequencies of the reverb. Also, stereo width knob, pretty self-explanatory. All right, so now it's time to talk about delay. So delay is basically the echo of the sound after it's done playing. Like, I'm sure we've all been in a room and we said like, hello, and then it goes like, hello, 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 hello. All right, so boom, dry wet knob works exactly the same as the reverb one. You feel me? Whenever I use delay, I'm usually around like this like 10%, maybe sometimes 30 if I'm really trying to do something weird or crazy or something like that. So let's go to 0% and we'll work our way up to 100% and y'all can see how the delay affects the sound. See, no echo at all. Bringing it up to 33. It echoes out a lot. Now let's get into the other knobs so you can customize your delay to whatever sound you're trying to make. You feel me? So the first one we're going to talk about is the feedback knob, and it basically determines how long the sound is going to echo out. Now the time knob is really going to define how fast it goes out. So feedback is how long it goes, and then time is like how fast it goes as it's going that distance. You feel me? Echoes out pretty fast. 1/2. Takes a while. Now, most commonly, I'm probably using 1/4 to 1/8 when I'm making presets. Now, high pass, low pass, same as the other ones. I'm not really going to explain it. All right, so let's talk about chorus. Now, chorus is kind of a weird one because when you try to explain it, it sounds wild and it doesn't really make that much sense. So basically what chorus does is that it's playing the sound twice. One, like this right here, it's like the regular sound, and then it's playing it a second time that's like slightly out of tune, but like the difference is so small. What it actually does is that it makes it like more wide and more rich. So if we go over here to the chorus, go to the dry and wet knob, bring it all the way down. Now let's start introducing the chorus more so y'all can see how it affects the sound. See, more wide, more rich. Now, like I said in the beginning, we don't have that much time to go over every single effect. So what I highly recommend to y'all is to go into other effects and really just experiment with the mix knob or the dry wet knob. Turn it all the way down, turn it all the way up, and see how it affects the sound and what it does. All right, so now let's talk about modulation and linking. So basically like what modulation and linking is that you could take these knobs right here, right, like you could take almost any knob and you can have it do something automatically, or you can have it do something whenever you press a key. So for instance, we can use this cutoff right here as an example. I'm going to bring it all the way down so it sounds like this. See how there's like no high end going, it's just basically all the low end of it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to assign like an envelope or an LFO to it. An envelope is the same thing as an ADSR, but they give you multiple, so you have more options to customize everything. How we have envelope 1 right here, the ADSR, like what we was normally doing to like mess with the sound. The second envelope doesn't affect the sound, so you can use it for whatever, you know what I mean? So we're gonna just take this, gonna drag it over, put it onto the cutoff, and then we can just shape it to however we want. So let's say we want this cutoff right here to slowly go back to 0. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the attack, we're just gonna move it up like this, and we're gonna keep the sustain up because we don't want it to come back. We want it to stay there. So watch, just by turning up that attack, this is what it's gonna do. So see, just by linking it and changing the envelope a little bit, now it has like this completely new modulation to it. But now let's say we want it to go all the way over, but then come back to where it was. We would just turn down the sustain because we don't want this effect to be happening anymore. Now that we took out the sustain, you feel me? Boom. Then you can customize it even more. What if I wanted to go all the way over there, then I wanted to slowly come back? So what we're gonna do is increase the decay. And just doing small little things like that help you customize your sound and make things so unique, you know what I mean? So now I showed y'all all like the basic fundamentals of making sounds. Time to make some sounds. We got keys and plucks, pads, synth leads, and synth basses. And through me showing y'all how to make these sounds, I'm gonna show y'all my process of how I make my own presets. So the first thing that I like to do is open up the VST that I'm gonna use. We're gonna use pigments. We're gonna click these 3 lines right here and we're gonna hit new preset. And that basically just takes us to the default settings for everything, you know what I mean? And then after that, I'll just draw in a simple chord progression, or I'll even go and I'll get like some type of MIDI like this right here, and I'll make the preset sound good, so I know for a fact that if somebody else wanted to use it for their beat, it would work. So let's just draw in a simple chord progression real quick. So now you can see we have a full chord progression, and we have notes that are hitting different octaves. So this would be a good test to see if the sound would actually be good. All right, so first we're gonna do keys. Keys is pretty simple because like you don't have to do any weird envelope tricks or anything like that, or any weird effect tricks. It's basically just taking waveforms or samples and stuff like that and just making it sound good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna boost the attack up a little bit, and just to give it a little bit more like movement, I'm gonna bring that sustain knob down to maybe like 60-ish%, and we're gonna take the decay knob and turn it up so it takes a little bit longer to get from the attack to the sustain. So we can even really just start with the sine wave right here. Turn this up, just see how that sounds. This one makes it sound a little bit more distorted. Maybe just use that one a tiny bit only. So that buzzing in the high end, I want it to be like reduced a little bit. So we're gonna take the cutoff knob and just bring it down a little bit so it cuts off a little bit of the high end. Now I personally feel like the low end is a little bit muddy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up an EQ on here. You know what I mean? So I'm just gonna take the low end, I'm just gonna cut it down a little bit like that. Now for all of my sounds, I'm usually layering two things at least. So this sound right here, it got more low end in like the mid frequencies and everything like that. So I'm gonna add another one that has a little bit more of the high end. We're going to bring in another wavetable, and we're just gonna like scroll through like the different presets that they have for different waveforms and just see what's up with it, you know what I mean? Yo, so that sounds pretty interesting right there. So we're gonna go over to the effects right here, and we're gonna like put some effects on it to sauce it up, you feel me? Alright, so this sound is sounding pretty cool right now. So I'm gonna do a couple tests and checks just to make sure it's perfect. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that it's not too loud or too quiet. I usually like my presets hitting around somewhere between the 15 and the 9 range. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move it at different pitches just to make sure that it doesn't only sound good right here, and it can sound good if it was a little bit higher or lower. And see, this is why we do tests, because now after hearing it at like multiple different pitches, I actually want to cut down a little bit more, and I also want to cut down some more of the high end. And boom, just like that, you got a key sound. Now if you want to change this into a pluck, all you have to do is just mess with the envelope right here. All you're gonna do is take the sustain all the way down, or keep it like really low, like something like this, and then you're gonna mess with the decay knob until the pluck sounds good to you. Alright, so that sounds good to me. One last test though, just to make sure that the quality is top notch, you feel me? Gotta take another MIDI and just test out to make sure that it sounds good. Boom. That's how you do plugs, bruh. All right, now it's time to talk about pads. Pads, very similar to keys, but mostly what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn up the attack a little bit more. We're gonna turn up the sustain too. Maybe not to 100%, but we gonna turn it up though. Having a longer decay, I'm with that, I'm with that. Maybe even turn up the release a little bit more, and then boom, it's gonna sound like a pad, watch. See, boom, just like that, it's a pad, you feel me? All right, now let's go over synth leads real quick. Synth leads are surprisingly easy because usually it's just one waveform and you put it into legato mode. So we're gonna go right here, go new preset, and we can just make a little sine wave, you feel me? What you're gonna do is you're gonna go right here to where it says poly, and you're gonna change it to legato. All right, so I've noticed that with synth leads, turning the attack up a little bit usually makes it go a little bit smoother. Also, turning up that release a little bit too is nice. Also, something that I really like adding to my synth leads is a little bit of glide. A little goes a long way. You don't want to do too much. I'm liking how it's sounding so far. Effects, usually with like synth leads, I don't go too crazy, just like maybe delay, reverb, maybe chorus not usually, because you're just trying to keep it with that one note kind of feel. And now that you have a solid foundation, what you can do is you can just change the waveform. So like, for instance, we could change this to more of like a triangle. And boom, you got yourself a blast lead like that. And see, you can just experiment and mess around with things until you make something that's kind of unique to you. Now, out of all the sounds that we went over already, the hardest one to cook up are synth basses. But with synth basses, you have to make them sound good and they have to slap. So instead of making one from scratch right here and just wasting a whole bunch of time, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to the lost files bank. $5 for this bank? That's crazy. And we're gonna go over to like my favorite synth bass that's in this bank right here. And we're just gonna go over what I did to make this sound. So boom, the first thing you wanna do whenever you're making a synth bass is to go to the tune section right here and drop it down. You feel me? So usually it's right here at like 0 semitones. What you're gonna do is you're gonna pitch it down either 2 octaves, which is 24 semitones, or 1 octave, which is 12. Now in this section, we're in the analog section, and I like this one because you can use 3 different waveforms at one time, as opposed to like the waveform one where you're only using one at one time. So with the basses, I really like to layer. So I got 1 sawtooth, turn the volume all the way up right here. I have a second sawtooth, turn the volume up to right here, which is about 50%. And I have a sine wave and I turned it up all the way up. Then on the other one, I opened up analog again and I got another sine wave just because I wanted there to be a whole bunch of low end just sitting down there, just making sure that this whole thing slapped. And then with the envelope right here, short attack, decently long decay, you feel me, with what is like 52%, something like that, and a very low sustain. So after making this shape right here, I went over to the filter and I brought the cutoff super low, and I turned the reso up high. Now the last thing, multi-band compressor and a little bit of chorus. One last thing for basses, it really should have been like one of the first things, but I forgot to mention it. Don't have it on the poly modes, put it on legato. To make them saucy like that, it has to be in legato. All right, and that's gonna conclude the video. If you are watching this and you made it to the end, please go check out Gatekeep Sounds. Go grab the Lost Files kit. Only $5, 40 presets, all of them converted to one shot, 20 accents, 20 midis, all royalty free. It's a no-brainer deal, you know what I mean? So with that being said, if you like the video, hit the like. If you want to comment, throw a comment. If you want to sub, hit the sub. And I'm out.